later.
I'll make the announcement and then we'll do the drawing at the end.
Okay.
For most of you that don't know me, my name is Lauren Whitman, and I am the student ambassador for Becker here on campus. Last semester, Matt came and he was talking about all the changes that were happening to the CPA exam, and that most of them were not going to start until summer of 2016. However, they have decided to change that and start changing them earlier. There's a lot of document review simulations on some of the exam pieces, and they're going to start adding those July 1st of 2016. And if you want to look at examples, they're on the Becker webpage. And then Becker also has a scholarship, but the deadline for that scholarship is February 1st. And if you guys just want to fill out this card, we'll do a drawing for a t-shirt at the end. But that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, yep,
Good.
we're ready.
Well, good. Well, welcome and thank y'all for having us. Tell you a little bit about ourselves. My name's Lance Whitley. This is Jeremy Sapp. I from Draffin and Tucker, obviously, but I graduated from Georgia Southwestern back in 1993, and spent most of my time in Albany, Georgia. My background is primarily in human resources. That's what my degree was from Southwestern, and wonderful experience here, although my mom says I spent too much time here. But had fun, got a good education. Been at Draffin and Tucker for about 6 months, so not been there long. And then I'll let Jeremy go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself.
I graduated from high school in 2005, and I was started right then. I graduated from undergrad in 2009, and immediately started a master's. And just the way the classes fell, I didn't graduate until 2011. And like he said, I had a lot of fun. Probably could have done a little bit better with my school, but it all worked out. But that's I enjoyed my time here, and I think I was the first president of this group, so it's good to see that it's still going. And it's a real honor to be asked to come back. So thanks for having me as well.
Thanks. So we'll talk about a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the firm, a little bit about what we do, and let you kind of get an idea of a public accounting firm and how we do things, what we look for in potential staff members, and then Jeremy's going to spend a little time just talking more in depth about what he does. I'd love to be able to tell y'all what he does, but nobody knows what he does. He's all over the place. He's doing all kinds of stuff. But so we'll, as we go through this, if you think of questions or anything like that, just stop us at any time and ask, okay? And I'm going to ask you a few questions, so hopefully we'll have some good responses. First thing about the firm, we are a regional accounting firm. We call ourselves regional because we exist in 2 locations. We are in Albany, Georgia, where we have primarily been for many, many years, but we also have an office in Atlanta, Georgia. We work with clients in 7 states, so we are spread out all over Florida and Georgia, everywhere, but we are actually in Georgia. Georgia's got a ton of counties, and we actually have clients in over half of those counties. So we are covered all over the place. Currently, we have just over 75 employees. 47 of them are CPAs. So obviously we have an emphasis on CPA. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And of course we have 13 partners. We've been around for 60 years. I think we started over in Moultrie or somewhere like that, but ultimately ended up with an office just in Albany for many years. We branched out to Atlanta about 4 years ago, and now we have about a third of our staff up in Atlanta. We are ranked 213th in the nation in revenue. I know that probably doesn't mean much to you, but let me ask you this. Does anybody have an idea roughly how many CPA firms there are in the nation? Just shout out some numbers. What do you think? How many are there in the United States?
40-something thousand.
40-something thousand. Who else? Anybody got another guess?
Maybe 60,000.
Good guess. Well, 40-something thousand right off the bat is exactly.
Oh, wow.
So that's a great guess, because normally I get 10,000, 5,000, so both of y'all, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. A lot of them aren't even registered through AICPA or anything like that, but the majority of those are sole practitioners. So, they're everywhere. A lot of small 1, 2, 3 partner firms, things like that. So a lot of firms, we're sitting there at 213 as far as revenue. Now, revenue alone, that just says, basically how much work we do. But it doesn't really tell you much about what kind of firm we are. So some of the things that we like to point out is, one, we've had multiple years where we've been ranked by Georgia Trend Magazine as one of the best places to work in Georgia. And currently, right now, Inside Public Accounting takes all their firms that they rank, like on revenue or number of CPAs or whatever rankings they have, and then they pull together all kinds of statistics on culture and benefits and turnover and those kind of things, and they come up with the top 50, 5 million in revenue or greater, top 50 of those firms that they consider the best of the best. And in late 2015, they named Draffin and Tucker as one of those firms. Very proud of that. I think that says a lot about our culture, and that's why we always try to share a little bit about our culture when we have talks like this. Some things that we are especially proud of, family atmosphere. That's one of the things that, like I said, I've been at the firm for 6 months, but known a lot of the people at the firm for 10, 15 years, and just know them to be good people. So I didn't know necessarily that they were Draffin and Tucker where they were. They're just people who were involved in the community. They were people that I coached with in ball or did something like that, and just always knew them to be good, high-integrity people. And so when I had this opportunity, didn't hesitate to jump on board because of that reputation. So, it's the kind of place where even as we grow, and we have 2 offices, we get together multiple times a year, do things, family days, we do Christmas parties. Even on my birthday, I walked in, and I'd only worked there for 2 months, and I walk in, and they say, hey, can you come here for a second? I walk in the break room, there's a cake, and they're singing me happy birthday. So It's just neat. And I know that those things, you can call them whatever you want to call them, but it's kind of neat to work for a company that looks at you as an individual and just not one of somebody that we're cutting a check to. We're proud of, I'm especially proud of this, that we're professionally casual because I don't like wearing a tie. So it's nice to be able to, in the office, a lot of firms are still very formal. We, in the office, typically we don't even wear jackets. We are more formal. Now, when we go to clients, we will dress up. We will have suits, those kind of things. But it's nice to have a relaxed atmosphere in the proper setting. And we expect people to use their discretion and, where they need to dress how. But we leave it up to the individuals to use their judgment versus dictating the strict dress policy. Work-life balance. This is a big thing that differentiates a lot of firms, and a lot of firms claim to have a good work-life balance, and a lot of firms do, But what we feel like is a big difference for us is that typically you hear those stories, you go into a public accounting firm working 60, 70 plus hours, especially this time of year, it's just pounding it. Our normal work week is 40 to 45 hours, home on the weekends. Gets busy occasionally, we do 45, 50, and that doesn't mean there is that odd time when somebody has to work extra for a deadline, but normally that 40 to 50 range is what you can expect, and home on the weekends. And the reason we do that is because we think of our staff as more than just accountants. Your hikers, your readers, your family, your moms and dads or sons and daughters or whatever you are, and you need time to go do those things and because they're as big a part of who you are, and we want you to have that time to do that. So that's why that work-life balance is very important to us. Teamwork, we are proud of the way that we work in teams and how people get along, and that's a big part of what we look for is somebody who's going to work well in teams. Continuous improvement. We do a lot of continuing education. We just do. I mean, it's important. Obviously, if you're a CPA, to get a CPA, you got to study. It stinks to graduate. For the next year or two, you're still studying for the CPA exam. But even after that, you're going to continue to take continuing education. It's a lifelong thing. So we're looking for people who are always trying to get better. And then our culture is we emphasize supporting our communities, supporting our profession. So we have expectations that you are going to be involved in doing things to better the community. We have expectations that you are going to serve on professional organizations and do things like that to further the profession. So those are all part of our culture and what are important to us. Some details about us quickly is healthcare is probably the main industry that we are involved in. I would say, what do you think, Jeremy? Probably 2/3?
That's probably 80%.
Probably 80, so 80% of what we do is healthcare. That's kind of a niche for us, and the neat part about that is that, you know, if you do that, have that niche, then you become known as the go-to firm for these hospitals and nursing homes and organizations who are looking for somebody who just does it occasionally. We're the experts at that. And so we've built a good reputation in that industry. But then we do commercial, we do work with nonprofits, closely held businesses, and even do some individual work, although typically that's with individuals related to maybe the commercial side, you know, where one of the owners also needs their individual returns done or something like that. Type of services, we obviously audit, we do tax, consulting, accounting, staff support. We do have a tax side, even though 80% is this healthcare audit work. You know, we do have this is a busy time for us, but as well for tax season. But we have just as busy times in when you know, the late summer, August timeframe, all the way throughout the year, just with the audit. So it's a good mix, a good flow for us to have all this diversity and services like that. What do we look for? When we, you know, when we meet with potential candidates and things that we look for, first off, we spent 60 plus years building this culture. So we look for people who are going to fit into that culture. People who are going to be willing to do those things I talked about on that culture slide, whether it's you know, working well with team members, things like that. So that's a big piece of what we look for. Integrity, we look for those that are going to you know, do the right thing, whether anybody's looking, whether they'll ever get caught, doesn't matter. It's either that's just the right thing to do. Leadership, we look at your involvement on different organizations or jobs that you do or whatever. We look at your leadership because, you know, the reality is we're looking for future leaders of the firm, and that's important to us. We have 13 partners. 12 of those 13 partners started with us right out of college. So all of them started right where you would start, and they're now partners of the firm. That's a big deal. That's pretty cool to me. That was always impressive to me that they have gone through and shown and what the potential is for anybody coming into the firm. We don't go out typically and hire a seasoned person that comes in. We try to grow talent from the start of your career. Involvement, we look at your involvement that tells on campus and in the community while you're here, and what that tells us is your ability to work with other people, shows us how well you do teamwork. You know, like I said, it's a big part when you're riding in cars, going to work at engagements out of town, or eating dinner with these people and spend a lot of time with each other. We want to know how well you do that, and so it helps us to see your involvement while you're on campus and other places. Professional. We mean professional as far as we are a public accounting firm. We believe we are a group of accountants, and we believe that for you to come to our firm, that you would want to reach the highest level of your profession. What is that? Well, I don't know if it's the highest, but what do you think do most of y'all want to be CPAs, or maybe? I mean, you don't have to. Not everybody goes that route, but I'm just kind of curious. Is that something that many of y'all think is the direction you want to go? So maybe half? So what we look for in a public accounting firm are people who want to go on and hopefully to become CPAs. Our clients, you know, they expect the best when we send people to them, and so when we can send somebody as a CPA, they know that, you know, why did they not send me a CPA, they sent somebody else a CPA. So, you know, our goal is, and plus we want to develop, you know, individuals to be the best that they can be. And so we encourage it. We provide Becker resources. We even pay for Becker resources, and once you pass the exam, we'll forgive that cost over a 24-month period. So that ultimately you pass the exam and stay 24 months with the firm, it costs you nothing for those Becker resources. So it's that important to us. Success, you know, when I say success, we do look at things like grades. I know it's hard to believe that we actually look at GPA and put weight on it, but that's one of the indicators of how successful you've been in your career. However, as we both spoke about, we know that things don't always go as planned. You don't know how many times I've talked to candidates who are they started out as pre-med. I mean, that is all the time. And so they go pre-med and end up in accounting. I mean, that's two different worlds in my mind, but it happens a lot, you know, or engineering or something, and they don't like all that math. They thought they liked math. Well, accounting's not math. Accounting's rules and regulations, you know, so they make a change. And so we understand that, and so that's why I have continuous improvement up there. Sometimes we see a poor GPA overall, but we realize that the major part of the GPA is actually really good. It's just a bad start, and then we see that we can see that improvement. That's important to us. So if we can see that kind of success, then we're okay with you know, a couple of bad years as long as somebody wakes up and moves out of that and you know, ends up with a strong finish. So finally, last thing, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy. How can I prepare? Finish strong. You know, a lot of times you get to the end of your college career and you're just ready to get done. And I'm just saying, finish strong. Finish it out all the way to the end. Don't just slack off. Don't let things dip. We are looking for people who finish strong, who are committed all the way throughout. You know, if you're going to get your master's, you know, finish strong in all things you do. Continue to learn. You know, be prepared to know that, you know, the next step is just a continuation. You're always going to be learning. You're not done learning. Know your firms. Don't show up at a firm or a company to interview, and I know you hear this, but it still happens. Showing up and just not knowing much about the firm or the company that you talk to. So know your firms. Be professional in all things. How you dress, your resume, cover letters. Have somebody else besides your friend next to you to review it. You know, if you can find somebody in a company that you know, have them look at it. I'm more than willing to look at a resume and help out in any way I can, but we see a lot of resumes that are errors on them, they're backwards. I don't care really about the content, just tell me what you do, tell me what your accomplishments. Other than that, just make sure that you've cleaned up the errors and that it looks professional, so I can get a good feel of what you've done. Practice. I think I have a recent, my daughter, I didn't tell you about my kids, but I have a freshman in college. I have a daughter in 10th grade, and she's doing some competition where she had to go do an interview, a mock interview. Don't practice with mom and dad. Y'all might can, but it was terrible. It was terrible because you don't take it as seriously. Go find somebody that is in a professional setting that can help you, and practice interviews. You know, you can practice here and with each other, but I'm telling you, if you go practice interviewing with people who are in a hiring situation, it will really help to get that constructive criticism. And finally, don't be afraid. That means you can only be told no if you actually go out there and do it. If you're telling yourself no in your head because you're worried about this company or your qualifications over here, you know, I have people who called me up and said, look, I can't even apply to your position because it has a 2.8 or 3.0, and I'm below that. If they had called, they would have not even gotten an interview, and we've actually hired those people before. So don't be afraid. Don't just assume that you're not qualified or you don't know the right people. Try. Worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. Now, Jerry's going to talk about what it's like once you get on board, okay?
Briefly, I was just going to say some things. It's a good lead-in, I guess, what I was going to talk about. How can I prepare? The things, and I didn't do as good of a job, perhaps, when I was in school that I could have done. You mentioned Becker and the CPA exam. I didn't get started on the exam until I started with Draffin and Tucker, and to say it's a challenge is, I can't underestimate. I can't overstate how much of a challenge it is. For me personally, I wasn't the type that was very studious and did very well. I did just, when I got here, I made B's, and that was good enough for me. So trying to, pass the CPA exam and learning how to study was the biggest thing for me. So the sooner you can get started on the CPA exam, the better. And I think you got to have 20 hours maybe, or some accounting hours, something like that, before you can even register. Well, as soon as you get that, I would, because you can take it. It basically follows like, your financial part of the exam is your 3 intermediates. One test sitting there for 4 hours. All 3, your intermediate book is a test over the intermediate book. So just try to think about that, about how the immense amount of information that you can be tested over in one day. It's really the first time I took it, I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. But I thank goodness I got it done. It took me about 1.5 years, which is, you know, I guess the way that Dad wanted to be done. How can I prepare? I would start, if you want to take the CPA exam route, obviously you gotta, you know, take your classes and get on that path. But I would, you know, talk with Lauren here and get Becker, actually, Becker wasn't all that great for me, so I hope I don't take any business away from you, but, whatever practice aid you wanna use and get started with that. And then anytime you get an opportunity, whether it be your homework or I remember CIS 1000, I think was the name of the class. I don't know how or why I remember that, but I do, it was an Excel class. Anytime you're working with like VLOOKUPs or pivot tables, subtotals, sum ifs, if formulas, basically that's all I do all day long. And I never would have thought I would, like, if it was, believe it or not, I just recently got married, and one thing that my wife nailed it too, they played like a newlywed game at a wedding shower. She says the one thing I couldn't live without, and she said Excel, and that was the truth, because I mean, Excel is incredible. It's an incredible tool. The number of things you can do in Excel is mind-numbing. Like, I think the average user can only use 1% of Excel's power, so you can store, you know, 1.5 million line Excel spreadsheets split with the right computer. So it's a pretty incredible tool. So those are the two things I would say that would prepare you the most. You know, make a good grade. You know, be involved outside of school like you're doing here. Work on the CPA exam, and then everything that you can apply. And you know, I didn't think all the Excel classes and all that stuff was what I would use, but now that's all I use. So don't sell yourself short for sure. You know, get your money's worth on that. But now I was going to kind of lead into kind of my GSW story. Like I said, I graduated from high school in 2005, came on up, and I graduated in 2009. So as soon as I got done with my undergrad, a small tax firm there in Albany, I was working with them for 40 hours and driving up here every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever it was, getting my master's for 1.5 years. So that was the worst 1.5 years of my life, but I got it done. And that ideally, you wouldn't have to work. You could just be getting your master's and studying for the exam, which a lot of the folks that come work with is kind of what they've done. But that's not how it worked out for me. So I didn't get started with the exam until I started with DT, but that's what I did. And I finished up my master's in 2011. Actually, Ms. Carroll told me that he doesn't teach it anymore, but the CEO, Phoebe Putney, which is obviously one of our larger clients, was a teacher, and DNT's their auditor, and one thing led to another, and I was working in healthcare by the end of that class. So that worked out very well for me, and I was blessed, and it was a really good opportunity, and I've tried to make the most of it. I've been there. I started in June of 2011, and I'm currently, started as Associate 1 in 2011. You go from Associate 1, Associate 2, Senior, Supervisor, Manager, and Partner, and right now I just got promoted to a Supervisor. So, and I've been there 4 years, so I don't know if that's ahead of schedule or behind schedule, but I just try to do the best I can. So maybe I guess they appreciate what I'm doing, but that's kind of how it works for me. And once you start off, but like I said, the levels of Associate 1, Associate 2. That's what most everybody comes in. Tim actually works with us, and I don't know how many of y'all do that. He works with our reimbursement department. And I didn't even know Tim was in the accounting club until we were getting ready to leave the office and head up here. But Tim's worked with us in our reimbursement department, which is a pretty new thing to do. Associate 1, most folks are like Lance mentioned. Associate 1s you're going to kind of bounce back and forth between our healthcare practice and our tax practice, depending on what time of year it is. In the fall you're going to work healthcare, and in the spring some folks are going to work tax. And it's good and bad because, for one, that's what I did. You don't get to specialize in anything, which is in that early in your career. Some folks are stressed about having a specialization, but it's good because you get to see almost everything. I saw the reimbursement part, which is the Medicare, Medicaid portion of healthcare. I did the audit for the hospitals, and then I did the tax returns and the closeouts for, which is what most people think accountants do in the springtime. I ended up kind of staying with the kind of mentioning to the scheduling folks that I like to work more on the healthcare side, to kind of do that year round. I wanted to after about 2 years I wanted to kind of start to develop a little bit of a specialization, or I gravitated towards the healthcare because we do it all year. I've got December year-end clients, I've got an April year-end client, I've got 3 June clients, and I got a really large September client. So instead of working like crazy, man, in March, my year's kind of spread out, like Lance mentioned. I have something going on all year, which works for me. Some folks may would like the tax, being really busy during tax season, but I like having something to do year-round, makes time go by faster. If you're there, might as well be working, right? Getting something done, folks. But what you do with your Associate 1, Associate 2, you're going to be working on areas like you see in your intermediate classes. You're going to be auditing cash. You're going to be auditing your prepaid assets, your prepaid insurance. You're going to work on fixed assets. You're going to work on some pretty basic investment type stuff, which essentially is sometimes cash, unless you got some real risky investments. But those are the things you're going to work on, and you're going to get bounced around a little bit. You're going to do field work for one client, and then you won't really want to see that client engaging all the way through. You'll go to another client, field work with potentially another team. That's just how it is. That's just the nature of the beast. Whenever you're a pretty new person, you're going to get bounced from team to team. Good, and you're going to do the same thing, which is good. You're going to see the way a lot of folks do something, and you're going to get a lot of exposure. That first 2 years is you come out of school and you think, I got an accounting degree, I'm ready. And then the first time you sit down, you see this monstrous trial balance, and it's like a dang trying to drink out of a fire hose. I mean, it is. And add on top of that, the CPA exam. So you got those two things that are very foreign to anybody. What you do here is, I hate to tell you, but it's not going to prepare you as much for really the first time you go out in the field. And you think, I don't know, whenever you start working, you're like, man, I've looked at the file, I don't know any of this stuff. Well, that's the expectation. Nobody expects you to know anything. I mean, there's even a sign, one folks work with us, she likes to point to the new recruits. It has debit this way, credit this way, because you'll get so confused, you'll forget the basics. So that's really, it's like the best I've ever heard is say, it's trying to drink out of a fire hose, and it really is. That first year and a half, you're just so busy, it just goes by so fast, because you're busy all day long, and you finally start getting the grasp about a year and a half, 2 years. Hopefully that's when you're finishing the exam, and that's about the time, ideally, I think they say Associate 1, Associate 2, is a year each, and that's when you start moving to your senior position. Associate 2, you may work on some more of a leadership position on some of the small audits, like a little foundation, say like BB owns a big foundation, you work on the foundation audit, not a lot of risk there. That may let you, be in a little more of a leadership position there, more interaction straight with the partner as opposed to an in-charge role. And it kind of sees who's ready for that next senior step, and then some folks will just stay at the associate level a little bit longer. I was an Associate 1, Associate 2 for a year each, and then in 2013, I think, if I'm getting my years right, I got promoted to a senior, and that's when I started becoming like more of an in-charge role. You have the titles, the formal titles of senior, supervisor, manager, but you're always kind of an in-charge once you get out of that associate role. You're in charge of an engagement. You have the partner who signs the financial statements, but then you're responsible for the day-to-day, progress of that engagement. So that's about 2013 whenever I started in charge in a little hospital over in Hinesville, and that hospital, it sounds like a lot, but it was about $100 million in revenues. That kind of tells you, we have clients upwards of $2 billion, and all the way down to, I think a guy was sitting next door to me, I called him over, I knew he was working on a real small client, with a hospital in rural Alabama, about $30 million in revenue. So we got them all over the place. And like Lance said, in every county, it's big and small. But that's whenever you'll start in charge and more leadership. You'll have maybe 1 to 2 staff people working with you that are associates that are doing the cash and prepaids, and then you're responsible for keeping them busy, corresponding with the client, corresponding with the partner, and just getting starting from day 1 to board meeting day. You work from board meeting day backwards. This is how much time I've got to get everything done. The board meetings are basically the same month every year. Almost the same day. It'll be like the 3rd Tuesday. They're all on Tuesdays for some reason. So you go to the 3rd Tuesday in April, you start field work. I'm starting field work on the 15th, going back to Hinesville, I think. And you kind of work backwards from there. So you know what you got to do this week, in order to keep the job moving on time and finish, to be prepared for that board meeting, in April. I still do it. We have more of a reimbursement department that Tim works with the partner, a particular partner I work with. We do our own cost reports, which is basically your reporting with Medicare, Medicaid, kind of settling up. You can call it your tax return at the end of the year with Medicare, Medicaid. Once I finish up the audit, we'll move into the cost report. It's all a big 3 to 4 month process, so it's not like you're finishing something like a sense of completion every day. You get that audit and cost report done, then it's time you start on another one. So I kind of rotate throughout the year. Other firms who do taxes and they have all the December year ends, I'm not quite sure how that works, because I can't imagine, going through the whole process, but somehow, all I can speak to is the way that we do it, and I'm kind of spread out throughout the year. And now, like I said, I just recently got promoted to supervisor, so I think at this level is when I start reviewing more of the seniors' work. Like I'll be a liaison on larger clients from, if the senior has some questions on some more difficult, risky areas, accounts receivable, that type of thing. I can help with that and be able to, kind of like I don't know what the word is, just a sense of comfort, I guess, between for the senior to the partner, so you don't always have to ask a question that may seem stupid at the time to the partner. That wasn't a luxury that I was afforded, unfortunately, but maybe it worked out well for me. But just because there's no better way of learning something, just go out there and do it. And I think Tim can attest to that. That's what you're doing right now. Is you just here's the computer, get to work, and come back to me with questions. So that's kind of the workflow, or how the points that I've made it to so far of how that you progress throughout. My particular firm is the only large public accounting firm that I've worked with, and that's how I've kind of progressed throughout my now 4 years with the firm. And some things kind of unique to our industry. Ms. Carroll said we had a lot of folks in an auditing class right now. You probably learn about your risk assessments and whatnot. Things unique to healthcare, like say you may think auditors go out and count peels or something, bean counters. A lot of folks say, "Is that what you do all day?" Well, basically, on risk-based auditing, you audit based on the risk. So when I go to these hospitals, like we don't even show up for the inventory count year end. We don't care. We don't care what inventory is. And it's just a bunch of peels, so we're not counting them, and we basically call it immaterial. For my big client is about $1 billion in revenues. We're not worried about $2 million in peels. So that kind of shows you the numbers that you kind of work with there. As long as something's right within, you think your account's got to be perfect all the time, but my large client, as long as you're right within 3 or 4 million, we're right enough. So we're going to keep on going on that. As long as you're not everything's off by 3 or 4 million. But that's kind of, you have materiality to play with on the audit side, where on tax, everything's got to be right to the dollar, because the IRS is going to get their money for each dollar you earn. So that's kind of the risk-based auditing. It's something that's unique to our industry. I know when you're new, Tim may have participated in it. I don't know if he was working with us yet, but like we have a large tractor dealership, and at night, September 30th, there ain't nobody in the building, and you always know it's September 30th because folks are out all over the southeast counting tractors. So they go out and look at 10 bulldozers. They say the inventory list is 10 bulldozers. Well, you got to check, make sure those bulldozers are there. Then you go to another one. So from industry to industry, that shows you the difference in what you may be looking at. In healthcare, all I'm really concerned about, the most material and riskiest number on the balance sheet is patient AR. Who's going to pay their bill and who isn't. And you have to value that AR based on aging and different payer buckets and payer mixes. It's quite complex. So the difference in what you're doing from day to day depends on who you're working with. You could go work for PwC or the Deloitte. They do it all. So they basically have to they do their risk based on what they're looking at that particular day. So that's just something that's kind of unique to our firm, is what we look at. You may think, all you do out there all day is count medicine or something. We don't do any of that. So that was something that I didn't want to get too practical, but that was the thing that I was going to mention, practical wise about our industry which is unique. Is there any questions? Kind of like what I tried to mention, things that you can be doing now, or things you need to be getting ready for. The only thing that Tim didn't mention, Lance did mention about our firm. What attracted me to Draffin and Tucker, I'm from Dawson, which is really small. I don't know how, I know Thomas knows where Dawson is, but it's very small. And I live in Albany now. And what I like about Draffin and Tucker in the town of Albany, if you say I work for Draffin and Tucker, everybody knows who that firm is. Now, you go to the Atlanta office and you go around and say Draffin and Tucker, nobody has any idea. So I kind of like the fact that in a small town, we were kind of a big deal, as opposed to, I'm not a big town guy, a big city guy. In a big city, nobody knows who you are. So I like the recognition. Like, you know, in Albany, there's 3 or 4 places you can work at. Most people are going to know who that is. Well, Draffin and Tucker is one of those. So that's what attracted me to the firm. And you know, we've been around for 60 years, so they obviously know. You got to set up for success there. So that's a little bit about me, and I know that was a big spiel, and a lot of things that probably don't make a whole lot of sense, but I started in 2005, that's 2016, so 11 years. It's kind of what I've been doing the past 11 years, so, you know, is there any questions?
I got a question about, where's that location in Atlanta of the firm?
It's in the Queen Building it's on the 285, the intersection of 285 and 400.
Okay.
The busiest intersection in the whole city. North side.
Perimeter Mall.
Okay.
Yeah, directly across the street almost from Perimeter Mall. And it's super nice building. Like, I've only been up there a couple of times, but it's very nice. Can't tell what that costs. Good question, thanks for the question. We have a, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you want to just reference our website, it's a very well done website. I actually looked at it before I came up. Just do a quick search, Google Draffin and Tucker, it's going to show right up. But it has a picture of the building. It's unmistakable. If you're on 285, you're going to see it. It's got a crown on top.
There's a pair of them, they call them the King.
The King and Queen building. We're in the Queen building. Go ahead.
From a hiring perspective, I know you gotta have 150 hours, right? To your license.
To be licensed, yeah.
What, is there any preference? I know you can just have your 150 hours, or you can get your bachelor and a 30-hour master's, or you can get a MAC, or, a master's in finance.
I'll get that question often, and there's not a preference. Honestly, if we want you, you're gonna hear it at school, get your master's. And I understand that, but the reality is we want you to be able to get your CPA. So if you've done what you need to get the CPA and you don't have your master's, we're okay with that. We hire, we will hire somebody more likely if they have their master's and, if they passed a couple of parts of CPA, that's the ideal hire. But we also hire, we have 3 associate ones right now who are taking master's courses online. So they hired in with the bachelor's with the intent of getting their master's, and one of them has actually passed 2 parts of the exam, but the other 2 are waiting, and we're okay with that, waiting until they finish getting their master's before they even start attempting the CPA. And so we work with the right candidates. We're okay anywhere in that span as long as the expectation's understood that it's a CPA track.
Right.
That's for our associate position. We have other positions in the firm that we will hire, people with bachelors and associates, but not many. Primarily, we are looking for the CPA track.
I have an MBA, which is all that's offered here, obviously. And actually, after I got done with my MBA, I don't know if Dr. Valentine still teaches finance, but whenever I was here, there was a teacher named Dr. Valentine. He taught finance, and I really liked him. So I took every finance class that I could, and whenever I got ready to get licensed, I didn't have enough accounting hours, so I had to take another accounting class that Ms. Carroll, I think, just created it especially for me, which is very nice.
There you go. Now you know it can be done even because you can.
Yeah, maybe I suppose, but it shouldn't have been so that you can do it all, and I kind of like the fact that Lance may not want to hear this, but if you go down the road, as opposed to having a master's in accounting, you have a master's in business administration or finance, I'm a little more diverse. So I didn't necessarily mind having just the master's in business administration.
And then I gave you the company spiel. I'll give you the dad spiel. Finish. If I would recommend for my own son, who is in business, right now at Southern, I'd tell him, finish your master's before you go out and get a job. Get your hours in, don't try to do it all, because I'm telling you, you heard what he said you're doing that first year, 2, 3 years, it's a lot. Just that, not talking about masters, not talking about CPA exam. So I would recommend get your masters, maybe while you're doing your masters, focus in on the Becker if y'all have classes, everything here. So, and try to get a couple of those passed. Obviously, once you get one passed, the clock starts. But one of the changes, did they extend out to the 24 months, or is it still 18?
I'm not exactly sure. They were talking about extending it, but they haven't decided yet.
I hadn't heard yet either, so that would be great, but regardless, that's not the way it is now, so, you know, but my recommendation would be, for my own child, get your masters, and then go to work, because the 3 that we have that are trying to do their masters while they're working, it's just hard.
On top of that, like, you know, you may be curious, like, what do we do? He's mentioned going to the client. There is some travel involved in what I do. The tax folks, they don't really travel a lot, and I talked to a couple more folks before I came up, and I think that the norm for the audit folks, the CPAs, is about 40 to 50 nights a year. So, in comparison to other firms, I think that's pretty low. So we don't, you know, you'll go in stretches for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, but then you'll be in the office for I'll be in the office now, well, I'll go out in February for a week, but then I'll be in the office all the way through August probably. But then I'll be out 3 or 4 weeks in a row. So that's kind of how that works. You do travel. You know, we stay in nice hotels. You get your own hotel room. That was one thing I didn't know. Whenever I started, like, do I got to share a hotel room with a complete stranger? Like, you know, I barely like doing that with my sister. But that you get your own hotel room, and you know, you travel. I mean, you got to have you got to be able to work with folks well, because at times you eat 2 or 3 meals with the same person for a couple weeks in a row. Where you run out of small talk. So you got to be able to come up with things to talk about.
Team, that's why working together is critical.
Yeah, you got to, and I think you got to find, you can find something in somebody that someone wants to talk about. Whether you want to talk about it or not, it doesn't matter. But yeah, if you're a staff person, when you come on, just figure out what's on somebody's wall or in their office, what they want to talk about, just talk about that. Whether you want to or not, because it sure makes your day go a whole lot easier.
Jeremy, I've got a couple of questions. You said that you didn't like Becker so much, or what is it that you liked about your preparation method? What worked for you?
Well, I like to think that I'm a kind of a high energy guy, and even though I have a pretty sedentary job, like I'm a pretty social person, and the Becker folks are just boring. They are so boring, and they're so monotone, like it's just hard to listen to them. And I like the guy, Roger. He was really high energy, and like, he was excited about this stuff. Like there was things that he'd say, and the way he'd say it, I would just remember it. I'm not a do a homework guy. I'm a watch you do it, then I'll do it one time, then I'm done. Well, Roger, he gets that in, and you remember some stupid things he may say really loud or in a hurry, and that was stuff.
Oh, I had a crazy Becker guy on my thing, but yeah, that was a long time ago. His catchphrase was, "All the way to the CPA, baby." He just kept saying it over and over.
Yeah, the Becker folks, it was a struggle for me, and I did the Becker thing through the firm, and I was it's getting forgiven now, but I bought Roger on my own. I failed all 4 parts once, and then I took badly on some of them. and then I passed, the first one I passed was regulation. That's when I was doing tax. I took reg, and you may think it's all about tax. Well, half of it's business law, which is, I don't think I remember taking a business law class, but it's about all, like, who owned property when, like when it's getting shipped and stuff, and it's crazy. I don't think I'll ever use it again, but I had to do it that one particular day. I passed reg, and once I passed reg, I passed the other 3 in 6 or 8 months. I was done. I tried to take, I don't know how much y'all talk about the exam, but the year split into quarters, and 2 months out of that quarter you can take it, and 1 month you cannot. So I would take 2 every quarter, which I don't know if everybody in the firm does that.
No.
What I would do, I would take those 2 until I passed one, and I'd rotate a new one on, and when I passed, it felt good to pass that first one. Passing the first one felt better than the last one, honestly, because you get really, even though I say I was, kind of do the bare minimum student, I'd always done fairly well. I graduated with honors. in high school, and not from here, but from high school. And then whenever you're called a failure 4 times in a row, it felt good to pass that first one, and then I knocked it out. So, and I think, most anybody can. I don't think it's the IQ test. It's are you disciplined enough to study enough? I would have to study. I'm an early morning person. I would get to the office at 6 o'clock. That sounds early, but I would get there at 6 and study till 8. I would, study 20 or 30 minutes during lunch. I'd take my lunch there, and I'd study like an hour after work, because when you first start, you're tired of the day. You're learning all day. You don't feel like studying. So I would study like an hour after work, and then I would, a couple of weeks prior to the test, Saturday and Sunday, I was up there in the Cube Farm, all day Saturday and Sunday, and that's what it takes. And some folks aren't, willing to dedicate that time, and that's really, I think it's a discipline test as much as anything. That's my spiel in the exam.
That's good. All right, a couple of hiring questions. How long is the hiring process, or what's your typical process? Did you apply online, and do you do phone interviews?
First, the hiring process, so a typical process would be we get, resumes, we get most of our resumes we do through schools. So we, through events that we go to, we do have some that come in through referrals or just cold. Honestly, the ones we get without any kind of referral, where we don't know much about the person, those aren't necessarily given the weight that they probably should, because we put a lot of emphasis on the ones we get through the schools, through events like this, or the actual, a meet the firms type event or something like that. We do those. We go back within probably 2 to 3 weeks to the school and do on-campus interviews. And so we would meet, just myself and you face to face, and we would talk, and I would kind of go through what I'll hope is a relaxed, informal process, not trying to trip you up, no trick questions or anything like that, but really getting to know you, trying to make sure you talk to me so that you can talk to the people you're riding in the car with for, 3 weeks at a time. But then if that goes well, then we would schedule within probably 2 to 3 weeks of that, or less, an office visit. And so our office visit, they probably differ from firm to firm. Ours is, and if you come to Albany, you're going to come in the night before, and if you need a hotel, we provide you a hotel. You're going to go out to dinner with a couple of typically we use some of the associate staff, people that you would be working with, a lot of the time side by side travel with, and we would, so you go to dinner, and then the next morning you come into the office at 9 o'clock, and we basically interview you from 9 o'clock to about 3 o'clock, talking to about 7 or 8 people, not to see how you do under pressure, nothing like that. We tell you about the firm and the history and travel, and we have different things, but really what we're doing is we're letting a lot of people sit down and talk to you and see how you interact, because we have, even though we talk about a common culture, we obviously have a diverse group of people with different likes and everything else, and so we just want to make sure that we have exposed you to a large group of people, and then we get feedback, and then usually within a short time period of that, we make decisions, on who we're going to hire. And hopefully, we have a need and we're able to hire everybody we want to hire, but it just depends on our staffing needs. Whether we need. It used to be, not even last year, where it was hire everybody you can. Now it's kind of, things are slowing down a little bit, and so we have to look at staffing and make sure that we have the right numbers to fit the scheduling needs we have. So within a 6-week period. So address the kind of the email. What else was there?
Phone interviews, you don't typically do that, do you?
No, I've done an initial, I know Tim, who was extremely persistent for the job we posted, but we got resumes much quicker than we anticipated, than we were preparing for the new positions, and Tim just was persistent, and I got tired of him calling, and so boom, here he is. So turned out that he was persistent and just what we were looking for that particular need at the time. We just created a small department with a couple of people, and who were accounting focused, but didn't necessarily have a master's or anything like that, or even a bachelor's. But other than that, we don't do a lot of phone interviews. It's more about that in-person interaction, to be able to look at those things I talked about earlier.
I have a question. Is there a certain time of the year that you're looking more to hire people, or is it just kind of spread out?
We look all year. I mean, we have two primary recruiting seasons. We do a lot of offers, and we look for interns and full-time hires at any recruiting season. We don't have a certain time we do each of those. It's all at the same time, typically in the fall, so August, September timeframe. We're kind of geared up in that recruiting mentality, and now we're just now getting into it. Really, this week is our first week. Spring's kind of spread out a little more. Fall, everything's really mixed, and just it's really the primary focus for us is that fall season. But then we start. We have 3 opportunities a year, so we bring new people in January, and June, and in August, and so basically working with graduation dates and things along those lines.
Do your interns generally work full-time, or do you do an internship that goes from January to April or something like that? How do you structure those usually?
So far, our internships have almost all been full-time. So for a 10-week period or whatever it is, full-time, basically doing what an associate one does. We don't have a certain, curriculum for an intern to come in. We bring an intern in, and we have the exact same expectations as a new hire, because we want to get that we want to know what they're looking for. Because honestly, when we bring interns in, especially because we don't have a ramp up at tax season, we're trying to put a bunch of bodies out there and do a bunch of returns. When we bring interns in, our full intent is for a full-time hire. So we bring an intern in, hoping that at the end of that internship or shortly thereafter, we can make a hiring decision to be able to offer a job. So as we look at those interns, and so we want them, if you do an internship or even an interview, we're expecting them to interview us. They're when they're doing an internship, they should be making sure we are the right fit for them. The last thing I want is somebody to come in and not, get a job offer, and they're flattered, they can't say no, whatever it is, and they join us, but 6 months later, a year later, they're miserable and they leave. We want you to have a chance to come in and see. So that's a great opportunity for the intern program. I guess the other side of that is, do we have the opportunity for somebody to come in a few hours a day and work through an internship while being in school? We don't currently do that. It's just not worked out. The circumstances haven't worked out where that was a fit yet, but doesn't mean that it would. It just need to be the right fit. We'd have to have the need for it. So.
Jeremy, what's your favorite part of the job?
I like the cost report. The cost report is mostly analytics and allocations. Mostly a lot of interpretation of whatever the rules may be, or how things need to be treated. You can live a lot of it in the gray, I guess you could say. Now, the ministry auditors down the road may not say that it's more in the gray, but in preparation of the cost report and trying to get the highest reimbursement for the client. And I like the feeling of helping the client. If somebody's struggling and you can find some things, whether it be bill supplies or whatever that somebody may have not seen before. Outside of the firm, we've been doing this stuff on healthcare. We're probably not going to miss a whole lot on a continuing engagement, but on a new engagement, if you can figure out a way to get an extra $500,000 or $1 million, as everybody knows, it's tough in healthcare. And I enjoyed that because I feel like I'm actually adding some value to the client. A lot of times you go to these big hospitals on an audit, you're going to give them back the same financials they gave you 4 months ago. So what have you really done at that point if you don't have any adjustments? I enjoy the cost report, and I didn't get too deep into the cost report because it's extremely complicated. But that's kind of where that's what made Draffin and Tucker what we are, is our expertise in healthcare.
What else? Any other questions?
What is your starting salary for an associate, and what kind of benefit package do y'all offer?
So associates is pretty standard across the industry, what we find. So we don't pay a whole lot of difference than PwC or something like that, somebody comes in with us with a master's degree as an associate one, then 53 is what we start at right now. So it's very competitive salary. We pay 100% of your self portion of your medical insurance. We have three plans in that, and we pay money. They're all health savings account qualified plans, so we actually even make contributions to your health savings account. So you really make money on that deal because you're not paying anything for your coverage. If you have family, then you pick up the cost of that. And then, of course, we have life insurance and other things like that. But most people are, and 401k that we match on. But most people are interested in, how we structure that health and how much it's going to cost you. And it's very competitive. I mean, I can't get it cheaper. It's zero.
And 401k is 100% of the first 3%.
That's
A lot
right.
of folks don't do that. I think it's pretty competitive. For any industry.
Yeah, a lot of people dropped their matching a few years back when got competitive, and some are adding it back, but Draffin and Tucker has maintained that matching throughout the good and bad because we understand that retirement is extremely one part of the full compensation package. Good question. What else? That it on there?
That's it on here too.
Are we at our time limit?
Yep, I think y'all hit it right on the nail.
Okay, well, we appreciate, your time, really appreciate inviting us here. It was, I think Jeremy is invited, so I appreciate you inviting me, Jeremy. I was so excited when he told me, I was like, please let me come with you, I want to go down there, and I know y'all said anytime. So thank y'all for having us, thank you for, great questions. Got some goodies for those that are actually in the room, and so please feel free to grab any that you want, and I'll leave some cards so that if you have any questions, you think of something later, please don't hesitate to call or email, okay? Thank y'all very much.
Yes, I was just gonna draw out of here for the online student, and then if y'all fill out your cards, I'm just gonna shuffle them up and have somebody draw one. Dr. Bishop, if you want to draw out of here for me.
Okay. Okay, online student number 36 is Laura Smith. Okay.
What are we winning here?
A t-shirt.
Congratulations. Okay.
We're winning a Draffin and Tucker.
It's a big ad.
Okay.
Here we go, you can draft another one.
All right.
Where did my, I had a pad in here.
Bryce Boyd.
I know his name, but I'm in the office. The hard part is figuring out how to.
Yeah, I think he's something engineering.
It's not really accounting based.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing is for accounting records. Yeah. So you're gonna draw this?
Oh, draw for that,
Yeah, do we want to do these?
Yeah,
For somebody that's here? Okay.
Do one of each, because I got an extra.
Okay. Okay. All right. Should we put this number back in or not? All right. Here, you can draw.
Okay. It is.
Okay, number 24 is Cindy McGinnis.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. I hope I still got it.
Cards.
Do y'all have the cards collected?
I am working on that.
Gotcha, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I want,
I have them up here. Let's see. I have some more I can.
I mean, if I can get it.
Thank you. I think they turned colors in or something. I don't know.
I was wondering if they did. My bank at home has cups like that. When you put water in them, they turn blue. Or if you put like hot stuff in them, they turn red.
Yeah. What bank is that?
United National out of Cairo, Georgia. It's a very small local bank. Thank you.
Grady County is one of my That's a big client, I'm talking about today.
Yes, sir. Grade General, I think they just went to Archibald a couple of years ago, and then, my normal doctor, he just sold out to Archibald,
Well,
and he retired.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, sir. We'll draw for the
Magic fingers up there.
Just for children.
Okay, we'll get one.
Oh, go Chelsea.
Oh, that's yours. That's a story. Sorry, you never really read it. All righty.
All right.
Well, thank y'all. Is that
Does anybody else want to draw for the other T-shirt?
Just a T-shirt?
Yes, ma'am. I have one more for you.
Got one more question I just thought of. How late do you interview for the August position? When do you?
Ashley Smith.
For all the positions, I guess. I mean,
we would go, I mean, we're starting now all the way through, probably,
Yes, ma'am.
May was my question.
Can I,
Okay.
get a copy of?
I already have an office visit set up for February, even though I haven't even started for a office I start tomorrow.
Is that pretty standard?
Yeah, I mean, we look, we actually have offers.
I got roll.
People starting in August, from 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So those,
I don't know if I got enough for
so we already have people scheduled to start on those days. So we will make offers this year for people who want to.
Wow.
So it's just kind of right fit with what your schedule is, we make it work.
Oh, okay.
Right.
We don't typically make an offer just more than 12 months.
Right.
Just
Right. Thank you.
we prefer, we like the internship program, we really like to bring you in, insurance, it's just a question. Fill each other out.
How do you go about getting in touch?
Okay, what we haven't done here, which we talked about, a few months ago, is we haven't really, done anything more formal here as far as, typically where we get invited is formal events that are hosted, like Beta Alpha Psi or something like that. And so, we have about 6 or 7 schools that just have those, or been on the firm's schedule for a few years, and that's where we end up going through kind of that process. And so, in those events, we talk to people for full-time hires and interns. Here, it'd be a little different. I mean, we'd have to, really, I guess, do things like this, get more involved, get to know you, and that's not your fault, that's our fault, for
Well,
not
and
being
it's not,
involved.
it's not that far to Albany, so,
That's right.
it's not, kind of thing that somebody could come down there and
Yeah.
talk with y'all, whatever.
Exactly, so what we wanna do, I think what y'all wanna do is try to build, a better relationship. I mean, we're just right up the road. We have had, at times, we sometimes struggle finding people who wanna stay in South Georgia. And so, we know that a lot of you, hopefully you're like us, you're from here, you love it here, you don't see yourself being anywhere else, and so, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those, those high performers who want to be in South Georgia and your passion for, what you do. Does that help? So, we are here today and hope to continue, staying involved and increasing our involvement at Southwestern.
Well, we certainly appreciate your taking time to come. I know, all these hours and things that y'all work to come up here and be here several hours and get home late at night. It's a little bit of an recognition, and we really appreciate your, being so willing to come and speak. And I know a few years ago, Mr. Wright spoke, and Jeremy came with him when he was brand new, I think.
Yeah, I think
So, anytime we've asked for any kind of support like that from Draffin and Tucker, you've been very gracious about accommodating us, and we really appreciate it.
You won't believe it when you read it. You'll be ready to go, but it's just fun. Thank y'all again.
Thank
Thank you. All right, thanks.